All right, that was too many cracks. All right, everybody. I'm still here with Rachael Newhouse. This time, we're going to talk more about her as the author and like how does she write books. Pick her mind on how she got to writing so many books and becoming successful author and all this stuff. So,
spoiler alert: most of it's an accident, but go on.
Happy accidents, right? But yeah, what caused you to want to be an author?
So I kind of grew up telling story. So I had a brother who was very close in age. He was 2 years younger than me. So we played most of the time growing up. We played together, and we would do Legos, Lincoln Logs, Hot Wheels, you name it. We would play it together, and there was always be like this really complicated story. Like we didn't just build Legos. We would build the city, and then we would have this ongoing quest with our little minifigures doing whatever. That would last like days and days. Like we would have this, we would pause, go to dinner or whatever, and we would come back and we would pick up this story where it left off. And it would go for weeks before we decided, hey, let's demolish this town and start over. And then we would start a new storyline.
This is the way.
Yes. So fun. So I did that for my entire childhood. And at some point in my teenage years, I think it was about 14, maybe a little bit younger, somewhere in there, it just clicked. I think I'd had to do like a school assignment and write like a short story, and suddenly it occurred to me, oh, I could write these stories down.
Yeah.
You know, so I just always been created stories. We lived in the library, and at some point I was like, wow, I could just put it on paper. Ta-da! And then I wrote actually fan fiction. Don't laugh at me.
That's how it starts.
No, but seriously, guess what I wrote fan fiction for? You'll never guess.
Bob and Larry from VeggieTales.
That would be hilarious, and I'm really tempted now. No, it was Legos.
Oh, okay.
Yes, so this was back in the early days of the internet. Am I dating myself? Just a little bit.
It's not that far back.
When they still had message boards. Do people still use message boards? I don't know. And there was a Lego fan club. Like, you would get the little sheet in your Lego figure with the code to sign up online.
Yeah. I remember those things, yeah.
Yes, and there was several fan fiction forums on Lego board for the different Lego sets. So my first story was actually a Lego fan fiction for the Exoforce sets, which was basically their like mecha ripoff, their mecha anime ripoff. It was totally Evangelion.
It wasn't Bionicles.
No.
But, okay.
Although I do remember those. Those were also the same era. I remember those movies. Watched all of them. Come on. But it was like their mecha Evangelion sort of ripoff.
I barely remember them, yeah.
Yes, yeah. I don't think it was a very long-lived set for them. But they had like a comic strip that they were posting online. And so I just picked up wherever that comic strip left off.
And made your own story
and made my own story.
Nice.
And the nice thing about writing fan fiction is you usually get immediate feedback because there's everybody else. They're just teenagers. They just love Legos. And they were like, wow, this is great. We love your stuff. I'm like, oh, I can do this. And so I wrote 2 more fan fictions. And then I was like, you know, I should write something original because then I can publish it. And that's how that started.
Okay.
So
that's fun. Fairly similar to my story. Like, yeah, me and my brothers, I have 3. I'm the second of 4 boys. So like we played make believe like so much throughout our lives, and I actually to keep myself from not being a menace in church as a very little kid, I actually would like write stories about like dolphins and raccoons going off on adventures, stuff like that. So fairly similar.
I love that.
And so I love hearing that. Even like we grew up with Legos and all that stuff, and we weren't allowed to get into Bionicles and some of that stuff, but like I still remember all of those things you're talking about.
Well, it's not too late to get in Bionicle, man. You can probably find those movies on YouTube now.
The movies and like now that I'm getting more into graphic novels and stuff like that, I kind of want to go back and grab some of those comics, whatnot.
I kind of do too. It's been probably 2 decades.
I don't want to know how much they're going to cost now. Because millennial nostalgia has a premium on it now.
It really is.
Yeah. But yeah, so what is your writing process like when you sit down and write this? Are you a discovery writer, outliner? How do you write the books?
I don't know. Let's roll a d20 and see what comes up on the given day. No, it really depends. I used to be more of a discovery writer. So like books, I would say books 1 through 6, but especially books 1 through 5 were really discovery written.
Okay.
Especially because this wasn't supposed to be series.
Book
1 was supposed to be standalone. I swore up, down, left, right, and center that's all there was. And my friends were like, really? My readers were like, nah. I actually had somebody write fan fiction for it to be like, yo, there is more story here. So I was like, okay, I'll do one more. Well, now I gotta resolve this thread that I started. Well, now I have all these other threads that I gotta resolve. So I really stumbled into having a series.
Okay.
It wasn't until probably book four, where I was like, okay, we're in this for the long haul, aren't we?
Mm-hmm.
So books 1 through 5 were very discovery writing. I was trying stuff. It was slowly, her world was slowly getting bigger. So it worked out as well because it starts very narrow and just adding stuff. It really felt natural, even though it was totally an accident.
Yeah.
But then once I got into past, definitely 7, 8, 9, but a little bit of 6 as well, it's really more of outlining because I already have so many threads started that now I need to resolve them. So I'm not doing as much discovery anymore, a little bit, but it's more about discovering the characters where it's like, okay, I have this scenario. Who is my character in this moment? What do they need to learn? How are they going to grow through this? That stuff I'm still discovering.
Okay.
But the plot at this point is, at least the overall framework is pretty well locked in stone, and I'm like, it's a save the cat kind of moment, or like, I know the cat's in the tree and I just have to figure out how to get up the tree.
Okay.
Like, kind of thing. So
yeah, that's one thing Brandon Sanderson talks about. Like, I've watched a lot of his college lecture stuff that he's re-recording now, and he says he outlines his stories, but Discovery writes his characters.
Yes.
Which I don't know if you've read many of his stuff. I'm working through the
That's
first.
on my goal, my bucket list for this year is I need to finally read a Sanderson, but I need to finish Dune first because I'm not having 2 big encyclopedias going at once. I'm not trying.
Well, I would say start with his Mistborn series. I mean, he has those like COVID novels, Trust of the Emerald Sea, Frugal Wizard's Guide to Surviving Medieval England, and the third one I'm forgetting. But like those are smaller, easier to wrap your minds around. But like the Mistborn trilogy, I'm trying to get through is really good. And
yeah, that's also what I heard, so that's where I'm probably going to start.
And if you like really big books, for the fun of really big books, go to Stormlight Archive.
They look pretty, but I don't love them.
Yeah, I'll
I'll
listen through those also, because again, 60, 80 hour audiobooks. Yeah, anyway, so yeah, it's curious hearing you say that, because that's something he, like a well-established author, already does.
Yeah, so I'll have, when I start nowadays, this late in the series, I'll start with an outline and it's mostly plot driven. I'll have some character stuff in there because even as I'm sketching out the plot, I'll know the basics. I'm like, oh yeah, so-and-so needs to figure out to do so-and-so. But 9 times out of 10, when I actually get in and I write the scene, I figure out that I had the general gist, but I didn't have it quite right. And it'll refine of like, no, this is who we actually are. The thing we're actually afraid of. Here's what we need to change.
Okay, yeah, so like you edit your outline as you are actually writing it out. Okay.
Yep. Yeah, so it'll change, but I'll start with at least a rough framework.
I feel like that's where I'm going to, because like when I wrote the novel in college, just because I was out of a job at the time, still going to college, and I still needed something to fill my time. So I just wrote an idea in my head.
You had free time in college? I'm so jealous.
Yeah, it was the idea of it was supposed to be a Bible college for men who are already in the ministry or people already serving to get a college degree. So it was set up for that.
Oh, interesting.
It wasn't set up for a 18 to 20-year-old dude who has nothing better to do with his life.
Oops.
So like, I did every single like extra credit thing I could do. But I when I also didn't have a job at the time, I already applied for 20 jobs that day. What else am I going to do? So so I started off just discovery writing because I didn't know there was any other way. And now when I actually, a couple of years ago, tried looking into it, I'm like, wait a minute, people plan what they're going to write before they write it? So
Weird. Yeah.
So as I'm looking at this stuff, I'm curious what people are doing. I think it's kind of obvious to tell sometimes. Like you can obviously tell, like, you just came up with that. Or sometimes like, wait, that couldn't have been just something that came out of your head because that's too well planned out.
Right.
But so you're kind of getting at how do you keep everything straight in the series? Like you can't just discover all of that.
Yeah.
How have you kept track of that? Do you have like a master document or?
No, but that's really just because of how my brain works. I don't need master documents, so to speak, because my brain loves a checklist. My brain keeps track of the details. It's what I do for my day job. I do scheduling. I do like our client database.
Okay.
It's just what I'm good at. So naturally, I'm pretty good at keeping characters straight. So most of what I do is obviously I do a little bit of outlining before I start, where I kind of hash it out so that I can kind of see like, did I cover everything that I need to? Did I remember this character? Did I remember to resolve that plot? Like I'll hash it out. And then I make a pretty good habit of rereading my previous books, especially before I start a new one. I'll always reread the last one. And I just finished rereading all of them, including the bonus material, because I'm coming into the final arc. So I was like, I'm going to start over book 1, read it like it's a brand new series, and just make sure that I did not miss anybody.
Okay, you're not like putting that down in notes or anything. You're just keeping that all in your head.
I do have lots of notes, but I don't have like an organized master document.
Okay.
So when I have ideas come to me for the books, I jot it down, and then as I'm making this outline, I'll usually have this late in the series. I'll have a checklist of like, okay, make sure you resolve this plot. Remember, you got to do something with this character, or at least put a pin in it so that you can resolve it later. Like, I'll have a checklist of like, make sure you do all the things. So.
Okay, yeah, because I'm trying to figure that out. When I started reworking through my novel, I started realizing I've got to keep track of this stuff, and then I would realize, wait, there's a continuity error. Like, I said this here, but not the, and yeah.
Yeah. So if I were to start over, like if I knew I'd been getting into a long series when I started, I would have done more of that at the beginning, done character bios, done all of that, planned it out. But because I kind of stumbled into doing a series, I discovered out the first half of it, I didn't have that. So I'm like, well, at this point, we're just going to keep discovering some of this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it obviously works.
It makes it a little messy and chaotic sometimes, and there's definitely I do what I call let's call it professional retconning, where I never specified, for example, what happened to Nick's parents. I realized I never mentioned them at all, which meant they were a blank slate. I could do whatever I wanted. So I could just throw them in as characters, write a whole backstory for them because it didn't conflict with anything that I already had. So there is some benefit to it. It's fun, but it does make for some chaos.
Yeah.
And occasionally I will write myself into a corner where I was like, well, I would really love, if I'd planned it out, I would have had this character do this. But I can't because I've already said they were over here. Like, they have an alibi. I can't just say they were over here. So every once in a while, I'll
you
back
can't
myself.
just surprise this happens.
Yeah, every once in a while, I've backed myself in a corner where it's like, oh, like, it'd be really cool. You know, if it was this character, like, book 8.5 is a bonus story. And there is a twist villain in that one where you find out they've been manipulating somebody via text message this whole time.
Oh.
In the book, I say who it is, and that it works for the plot. Like, it fit into the narrative of 8 and 9. But now that I've gotten a little deeper and I know who's going to be the main villain in the final arc, I kind of wish it had actually been them. Like, I probably could, like, I almost wish it had been this other person impersonating the person that it actually is.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like, it would have been a nice extra layer of, like, this villain that's not been announced yet has actually been involved the whole time. Like, that would have been really cool. But because I didn't plan it out that way, I already said for sure it is this person sending these text messages. Like, I can't retcon that.
No.
And like, it totally works the way it is. So I'm the only person disappointed by this because it totally fits in the narrative. But it would have been a nice twist to be like, oh, it's actually this other person. You know, stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one of the things I'm considering too, because I have a big project in my mind of I have like an epic trilogy thing in my mind, but I'm setting it ahead of time. Like, I'm going to make that as my outlining experiment, like heavily outline that whole thing. Because I want it to be more of like the epic fantasy kind of deals, whereas everything else I kind of want to be a little bit smaller, but we'll see if that happens.
Right.
They're all ideas at this point.
Yes, things that are supposed to be small sometimes don't stay that way.
Sometimes don't.
They really don't.
Even the novel that I wrote, I realized it's pretty much like Narnia meets Animorphs, but there's dragons.
Okay, I can get behind that.
Yeah, and a lot of the dragon behavior and stuff came a lot from Brian Davis's Dragons of Starlight series.
Okay.
And so I started thinking, like, wait a minute, what if there's a second book where I mentioned this other continent over here that they just hit and run on because that's its own ball of wax.
Right, exactly.
What if they try going to solve that ball of wax?
Exactly.
And so I'm trying to work on that too. So yeah, that one I'm trying to keep a little bit smaller because that's aimed for like YA, like older teenage group.
Yes.
And that they're not going to want to read a 1,200 page book. I don't even want to read a 1,200 page book.
Well, you might. That's not true. It depends on the older teenager.
True.
I have a lot of people that they really wish my books were longer, and they're getting their wish finally.
Yeah.
Much.
Yeah. But I even thought it was curious. You started wanted Red Rain to be a single series because I also saw threads there of like the fact that there's so much of the base that used to be used, but they why did they condense it?
Right.
And like even the fact that she was unlocking doors, that people were like, how did you just unlock that door? You shouldn't even, nobody knows this room is here. How did you get here? Like, I'm like, there's too much to just not be planned that way. But okay, that's how it was.
Yes, which now that I'm into it, I'm like, oh yeah, obviously there was more story there. But in my head, I was like, this is it. I just came to write this one little story. We took care of the super weapon. We're done. We're done here. That's all I needed. And people were like, yeah, just do that. Okay, fine. I guess I won't.
Well, you kind of wrote your way into a career.
Yes, I really did. I'm hoping the 12 books will satisfy the plot, but we'll see.
Okay.
But they'll probably be a spin-off because at this point the characters are so well loved. Like I might do a few other things. Like people aren't going to want to say goodbye just yet. So we'll see.
No.
We'll see.
Yeah.
No promises.
No. But yeah, one thing that was just doesn't matter at all. But I was curious, why did you choose the NIV to be used in your books?
So that's really just more of a practical decision because I wanted one that's in plain English. So I didn't want to do King James. Yeah. Because that would just be distracting in a first-person narrative book that's otherwise written in modern English to just all of a sudden thee and thou. Like it would just not, that would have been really weird. So I wanted one that was easy to read and fairly, but I also didn't want so easy to read, but also I didn't want to paraphrase. So I didn't want to go like the passion or the message because that's now also going to be jarring. Yes. So I basically wanted the most vanilla Bible version possible, and the NIV is a good middle of the road, very easy to understand, standard English, but still it's not a paraphrase. Okay. So it was, and it's also a fairly because I don't want to alienate people over a Bible choice like that. That would be a really dumb thing. There's plenty of other controversial things in the book. We don't want to do it with translation choice.
Why add to it? Yes.
So something like the NIV is also very widely accepted. So it's a pretty standard, just basic vanilla really is what I needed. So that's why I chose that one.
I thought I had a curious idea. I was wondering if it was going to be a reason, but like the NIV is one of the few translations that doesn't have Bible in the name. So maybe the one world government tried to wipe all the Bible files and missed the
NIV. Oh, no.
Okay,
that would have been cool, but no.
Yeah, because I just also asked that because like the next information book I'm working on is over like English Bible translations. Like there's way too many to choose from. How do you choose?
Right, and they're all good for different things. Well, not all of them are good. There are many that are good for different things.
They all have their... So, that was just a curious thing that like, it doesn't matter. It's just a thing of curiosity because I started...
I've never had anybody ask me that, so that's kind of nifty.
Yeah, because that's what happens when you get a theology major, asking questions.
That's fair.
But I remember reading through it, I'm like, that's curious wording. I wonder what version it is, and I flipped through the book, like, oh, NIV, cool, okay.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep.
But yeah, what is your favorite part of like the writing process as you're sitting down and writing? What's your favorite part of it?
Oh, probably it would be drafting a scene that I've had in my head for a while. So like I've been thinking of it. I know the words. I know what I want to do. I am so excited about this emotional beat or this character development. Sitting down and getting to actually like finally spew that out on paper. Like that's the best part. Yeah, where it gets difficult is getting to that stage where it's like, I know exactly what I'm doing. I have the beat. I know what my characters are. I am in the zone. Let's go. Yeah, it's getting to that stage.
I know. I've found part of that in my writing is like sometimes for the project that's in the future, I'll have an idea in my head like I'm just gonna type that up. Okay, file that for later. Because it's the boring parts of like you know the A, you know the B. But there's kind of the boring middle.
C, 8.2. So
you kind of have to get through.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, but what part of the writing process do you hate the most, though?
Depends on the day.
Okay.
Wow, that's a good question. It would probably be. Well, lately it's been trying to grind through books where I'm not quite sure where they're going. Like I'm still in the discovery process, I guess you could say. That's happened to me a lot with these I've just put out 3 bonus stories at once, like 3 in a row. Okay. Because I messed up my own publishing timeline. Don't ask. So 7.5, 8.5, and 9.5 ended up coming out one right after the other. And originally in my outline, there was going to be just an 8.5. That was it. There was no 7.5, there was no 9.5. But then a character that we mentioned in the previous video that I still hate because he keeps messing up his timeline. Because he decided he needed a redemption arc, my timeline for these half books changed. Because originally, 8.5 was supposed to be his villain origin story kind of vibe, where we find out he switched sides, and then he comes back in book 9, dies a gruesome death, everybody's happy, right? That's not what happened. So I had to completely restructure what 8.5 and 9.5 were. Okay. But I'm still trying to sandwich them into 8 and 9 were already written, So now I'm trying to sandwich them into the timeline and a little bit of retconning and just figuring out like where am I going with this. So I had no brainstorm going into starting to draft these books. It was a completely blank slate. I had nothing. All I knew is I need these characters and I need them to get from point A to point B. I had nothing in between. And so there's been a lot of, it's taken longer than it would usually take me to write a book, and a lot of false starts because I'm starting from scratch.
Yeah.
And trying to fill in between the lines where I already had the A and the B and I need to get in between them. So I have quite a few restrictions of boxes I need to check, or this is going to mess up my own canon. And so that sort of grinding process of like, what am I doing? Like, is this story worth writing? Because like the bonus material there, it is optional. I technically don't have to do one. So like, do I really need this story about, for example, Nick's dad was 7.5? Like, do I actually need it? And just going through the discovery and finding that voice for these new characters that originally they weren't supposed to have a voice at all.
Okay.
So that's because it's a lot of frustration. It's a lot of false starts. A lot of, I'll sit at the computer for 4 hours and get 100 words down because I'm trying to find out the heart of the story.
Yeah. I'll say that's one thing I found out. I was curious. Have you read any books on outlining or looked into videos of it?
Nope. Just make it up as I go along.
Yeah, I've read two. I have another one. K.M. Welland has a lot of, she has a lot of books on like structuring and how to plan character arcs, stuff like that. If you want to look into it, I have the time to. But that was one of the things I think. Actually, the book "Take Your Pants Off" discussed it, and it's the whole title of the book's playing off the fact that the UK pants are underwear to them. And so like the cover art is just like cartoon underwear, but like that author pointed out that like that's a benefit of heavily outlining before you write, so you don't have that blank slate moment of like, what do I do now?
Yes, exactly.
But I think to some extent you can't prevent that. You're gonna have that to some extent at some point.
And I've also found that if I outline too much, I have too many details, then writing's not fun anymore because there is no discovery. It's like, well, now I just got to sit down and to transcribe these plot points that I've decided I have to have. There's no excitement, there's no adventure. So like, it's a constant tension between I need enough so that I know what I'm doing when I sit down. But if I've outlined it to death, where it's like, well, I've already told the story in my head.
Yeah.
It's not fun to tell it anymore.
Yeah. That's where Stephen King is. So that's something where I've kind of learned, like, where, of course, you take everything and, like, how can I apply this? How does this work for me? And I realized that some of the books are talking about you should outline to, like, the exact conversations and how everybody's going to say what, where I'm like, why, though? Where's the fun in that? Like, okay, yeah, you plan it out ahead of time, but then you actually write it, fill it out later. But, like, yeah, to me, like, what I've started doing is, like, okay, these are the things that need to happen in this chapter because this is the big outline this other chapter fits in. And then just letting myself run free from there.
And it depends on the writer because everybody's brain works differently. Some people, if they don't have that outline, they're going to get lost. Or they're going to be overwhelmed. Or they're just not going to have any fun. But other people like me, if it's 2 outlines, I'm going to be bored. So the trick is to know who you are. Try it both ways. If you're stuck, try it the other way. And be prepared for it to change. You may be an outliner on this project. This other project, you may need to be a discovery writer. Or, you may start out as a discovery writer, but now that I'm getting further into writing, I'm more of an outliner. So it can change, and that's okay. There's no wrong way to do it as long as you're getting words on paper. If you're stuck, try a different method. Try outlining. If you're stuck, try throwing the outline out the window and writing something brand new.
Yeah. Well, I've even found, like, me trying to write information and fiction, I don't know how people can write information books, discovery, like,
no.
Especially like the heavy theology stuff I'm writing, like, I have to outline what everything's gonna fit where, because like I'm reading 20 books to pack into this one. Like I can't just throw stuff.
No.
So
that's
like it's
completely different ballgame.
It also matters to the genre, right?
Yes, correct.
But I didn't write this down. Came to my head a little later. Like what caused you to want to go independent publishing rather than traditional?
I have no patience.
Okay.
Well, that is a factor. Is I didn't want to sit around and wait 6 months for just an agent to tell me no. Like I would rather talk to a reader face to face at an event, like I talked to you once, and have you tell me no. Like I would rather spend 5 minutes talking to you and you tell me no and you walk away and we're done, than me to solicit a bunch of agents just to get a no. So that's just how I would rather do it. But also I realize like these are not traditional books. The genre is not quite made up, but it's almost made up. Like, there's very little precedence for Christian science fiction. Not unheard of. C.S. Lewis did do it.
Yeah.
There is a couple of examples, but it's not a very big genre.
No.
So there's really not very many publishers looking for it right now.
Yeah.
Breadwin was also very short. It's 35,000 words, which is technically a novella.
Yeah.
In fact, they were all novella length up until, I don't think we cleared 50,000 until book 6, maybe book 5. But for the most part, they were novella length.
Yeah.
And I was publishing them in source section. That model does not make sense for a traditional publisher. They're not looking for novellas. It doesn't fit in their marketing. It's just not going to make sense for them. So
their kids book, does the word count change for kids book, or is it dependent on the publisher?
It depends. If I was marketing this as YA, which they are still young adult, but I realized after I got into it that they actually are they're actually very popular with middle grade readers. Had I known that going in and I tailored my books more to middle grade, that may have been okay.
Okay, yeah, reading Red Rain, that's where I pegged it. It was like
upper middle grade, yes. Yeah. So that was an accident as well. But now I've learned a lot about like what are actually readers looking for, what are parents looking for. So that's information now I can take with my new books. So had I approached a middle grade publisher, if I would have made some changes though. To how I probably would have dropped Phil's age just a little bit, stuff like that I would have had to change. That may have been okay if I'd approached it like, hey, I'm going to write a middle grade series. But as young adult, they're too short.
Yeah.
So it would make no sense to go to a publisher and be like, you want to publish my 35,000 word standalone? No. You know, like that's not going to make sense.
And then you get stuck on the independent path because that's where you went, you started.
So at this point, I've already put so much work into building this series and finding my readers. A publisher would have to offer me like a really, really, really sweet deal to get me to want to pull away from that because I own my readers. Like they're coming, they're paying me, they're not paying a publisher.
Yeah.
You know, like I'm not going to share that with somebody unless they're going to offer me something really, really epic. So, but for a future project that's more in line with the genre expectations, like I want to work on a romantasy, you know, like or something like that I would consider doing a traditional publisher. So I'm not against traditional publishing. I just know it was not a good fit for me at the time because I want the control.
Yes.
And I don't have patience. I don't want to wait 2 years for my book to come out.
Yeah. Well, that's why
future projects, yes, I would consider it.
Yeah, that's kind of a lot of what pushed me to try the independent route too. Was like when I started learning about the publishing industry, like you only know of traditional publishing.
Right.
You don't know about independent authors unless you hear about it.
Correct.
And so I'd started thinking down that path, but I stumbled onto the Creative Pen podcast, which is really good, and hearing that looking at articles or whatnot, hearing that it could take 5 to 10 years after you wrote the book to get it published. I'm like, and you basically have to go around panhandling and begging people to publish your book. I'm like, I'm not degrading myself to that. Like, you either like me or you don't.
I'd rather beg you to buy my book. Like,
exactly.
Yeah,
like I'm not going to go to a bunch of bigwigs and just beg for 5-10 years for them to never publish a book anyways.
Right.
So yeah, and even kind of on my side, I think the information book readers and the fiction readers will be different, but like. My Christian books aren't going to be like in your face Christian like Ted Decker or Brian Davis are.
Right.
It's going to have like Christian influences on them and Christian morals, but it's not going to be like Jesus in your face either.
Right.
And I'm going to write in The Pearl and the Mark is what the novel's called now. Like there's some pretty dark stuff in there because it's Narnia if animals actually acted like animals. So they're tearing out each other's throats, doing very graphic things that like.
Watership down up in here,
Yeah, which I'm surprised that he is even classified as a children's book still. I don't understand that. That's the most scarring movie I ever saw as a kid. But especially the Rabbit Bunny. I also didn't want like a publisher to like see like even if I got the information published by say Penguin Random House, and then like my fiction books published by Tor or somebody completely different. Somebody from Penguin going, hey, we don't like what you wrote over there. We're not publishing your books anymore. Or like, it might even be paranoia, but like some publishers, like with my the next information book on Bible translations, I wouldn't want like a strong like Ruckmanite publisher to go, oh, we're not publishing on your work because of where your research led you. Yeah, and so like some paranoid stuff like that, like. Granted, it might be paranoid, but like if I can just cut that concern out, I'm going with it.
Yes.
So it was cool. It's kind of cool hearing people who also done that path as well. but now the actual questions I've asked, like I've seen on your social medias and stuff, you've gone to several like homeschool conferences and stuff like that, presented at homeschool conferences, and I was homeschooled K through 12.
Nice.
So like,
Lucky.
and there's nothing wrong with me, but like what caused you to go to those things, seek those out, and how have you been received there?
So I'm also a homeschool graduate.
Okay, cool.
Now, I was not K through 12. I did, but it was a slow process for my parents deciding they wanted to homeschool. So I've actually been in both public and private.
Okay.
So I was homeschooled from, was it the fifth grade? Fifth grade. I don't know. It was a long time ago.
Okay.
Fifth grade on through high school. So, so part of it is, I'm a homeschool grad. These are my people. Hi, you know, like I'm going back to my old stomping grounds. But there is, of course, a little bit of pro homeschool. You probably caught it in book one. Very subtle because, of course, we're busy saving the world. We don't really have time to talk about these things, but there is some pro homeschool themes. But really, it's just a really good market because you, having been a homeschooler, you understand, like, most of them are voracious readers. They read a lot, and parents are just desperate for clean fiction.
Yes.
So, because, you know, when I was growing up, I don't know about you, but my mom could pretty much just let us loose in the library because back in the, 90s, early 2000s, and she could kind of read the back cover and be like, yeah, this is probably fine. Like, she did not have to pre-read all of our stuff.
Yeah.
You can't do that anymore.
No.
You cannot, because if you don't pre-read, you're going to run into spice, you're going to run into LGBT content, like, you just can't do it anymore. And so they are so desperate for clean fiction that they can trust, where I can look them in the eye and say, I don't do language, I don't do sex, there's no LGBTQ, whatever content in here. I have a whole parent-teacher guide that breaks down all the violence, so you can make a decision if it's good for your kid or not. Like, they are just, that's what they want. Like, so I see your next question is, how has you been received?
Yeah.
Amazing. 10 out of 10. It's the easiest sales I have, because all I have to do is tell them, here's a book series you can trust. I've given you all the parent tools, so you do not have to pre-read these if you do not want to.
Yeah.
I have a whole thing on the website, just read the guide. And they're like, sold, I'll buy all 10. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, because they just said they're so desperate, and of course homeschool teenagers are amazing. They're hilarious, and they're not afraid to speak their mind, and I love them. And they talk to all their friends, and then all their friends want to read the book too, so it's perfect. But yes, it's where my good base market is right now, and that's really where I'm building out my readership and getting my rabid fans that are enabling me to go into other spaces with a fan base already. And be like, no, these books are good. You want to read them, I promise.
Yeah. No, and even that's a huge thing. I would hate to have kids now and reading stuff, because it's like, because you have to read like everything.
Yes.
And even like in the Light Lark series, like, it's pretty fun romancy, but like, holy cow, like, why is that okay for teenagers to read?
A little spicy?
More than a little. I can't even get into it. And even Fourth Wing is just like I love the world she's telling, and the story, the plot is all good, the dragon interaction is amazing, but like, have you read them?
No, because what happened was I bought them because, I like dragons. I'm like, I'll love these. My best friend started flipping through this, got a couple chapters, and was like, you can't read these. These are not for you. I was like, oh, okay. Yeah,
case in point is the main character. She learns to control and channel magic through being horny. I wish I was joking.
I have some questions. No, don't answer these questions, so I don't want the answer.
Yeah, you don't. No, it gets worse than that. You don't want the answer.
Nope, I'm good.
Yeah,
I'm out.
so like,
I'm out.
So yeah, and that's the thing is, to balance too, and like even Christian work is, I think even C.S. Lewis at one point said we shouldn't shelter our kids from any evil at all, because then they won't know how to handle it when it's presented to them.
Yes, exactly.
So like, how do you run it? So I think you do that effectively, and at least in Red Rain that I've read, of like, that like a lot of bad is going to happen if something doesn't change.
Right.
And so like, you do put the evil and the sense of danger there without getting graphic with it.
Right.
Like the Chronicles of Prydain did really well. It's what the what's the Disney movie? The Black Cauldron? No.
Oh, that's an old one.
Yeah, it's the series that movie's based off of.
Oh, okay.
And actually, surprisingly, Disney made that movie more evil than the book is. The book had nowhere near that level of necromancy in there as it is. So like, yeah, and so that's what I liked about this, is the Chronicles of Prydain did a really good job of presenting evil. People are still dying. There's good and evil and all that stuff, but it wasn't. you felt the evil, but it wasn't like disgusting in your face.
Right.
And I think you hit that pretty well in Red Rain. But yeah, how also along that vein, you put a lot of stuff on social media, so going to various like Planet Comic Con, like all these other sci-fi cons. How are you received by non-Christians? Because that is a very heavy atheistic, agnostic at best world. How have you been received as an obvious Christian series in those worlds?
It depends on the event and the city. Actually.
Okay.
So it really depends on the kind of crowd there. Because the reason I go to these events is because, of course, I love sci-fi. I am a nerd. I am in this space. And there are other people like me in this space. Mm-hmm. So my best interactions come from, because it's very obvious in my banner, I write clean Christian science fiction. I am not trying to hide that, because I don't want somebody who doesn't want that to read it and leave a bad review. Like, you know what you're getting into if you pick up my book. So because I have it on my banner, I am finding all these people that they read and they're like, oh, I didn't know there were any other Christians that liked sci-fi. I didn't know there were any other people like me here. So we have all these really good interactions where I'm pulling all these people. They love the nerd space. They love superheroes. They love Marvel. We love all this stuff. But we are also Christian. We want to have good, clean things that we can read and enjoy or hand over to our kids. In many cases, they're looking for stuff for their teenage kids because they remember growing up on, Star Trek and whatever, and they're trying to find something that they can now pass on to their kids safely. So it just varies, because I'll go to some where there's a lot of really good response. There's plenty of people that want it, and then I'll go to some where there's no interest at all. I don't really get any backlash per se. Every once in a while, somebody will make a snide comment, but for the most part, if people don't want it, they just keep moving.
Yeah.
So there's so much else
about those events.
Yeah, there's so much else to see and do. Like, every once in a while, I will get into a conversation with somebody, which is actually usually kind of fun. They're like, hey, walk me through this. Like, how did you come to this? Like, how is this a thing? Like, isn't this an oxymoron? So every once in a while I'll be able to have a really good conversation with somebody.
Yeah.
But for the most part, people either want it or they don't, and that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair. Even that's where I see the power of marketing is just put out what you are and then see if people want it. Even I thought it was interesting. I read you were the first independent author book that I picked up in Santa Caligon 2-ish years ago. And but the first one I actually read was Glitched by Isley Rose.
Oh yeah, she's so fun.
Yeah, she's a really fun person and all. But it was funny because I reviewed, when I started doing this channel, I reviewed the book, put up the review, and I was just honest with how I felt about the book. She wrote about a hyperfixation I had as a teenager on Spartans, because that's when the 300 movie came out and all that stuff. Didn't watch it at the time, but I saw the History Channel documentaries and stuff, so it really caught my fascination. But then she writes about that now. Mm-hmm. So I read through it and really fun, really good, really fun read, really easy to read. But there's so much sexual tension in the book, it actually got on my nerves. And it was good.
And she knows that.
Oh yeah, she does. But
she knows.
Yeah, I said that in the review and put it out, and I was really hesitant. How is she gonna take that? Because you don't want to come off as a prude or whatnot, but that's how I generally felt about the book. And she was like, "Yep, you heard it here. It's in it. You want it?" So it's that's the power of this is what I am.
I would rather just tell me it's spicy, and I'll make the decision if I want spice or not. You'll find there are plenty of people that want spicy, and they also would like you to tell you that it's spicy because they only want to read it if it's spicy. You know what I mean? It's just be honest.
Yeah. Yeah.
There are more readers. If this one is not for you, they will go find a different book, and the next person that comes along probably wants your book.
Yeah, no, people are either going to like it or they don't. I was just curious about, for when I look into the future, going to different events, possibly how I might be received, because here's how to be a Christian, and then here's an imagination.
Yes.
Running that weird.
Yes, and some of it's obviously picking and choosing what I'm going to market at an event. So obviously, Planet Comic Con, great for sci-fi, great for fantasy. Don't bring your theology books.
Obviously, yes.
Don't even bother. But now if you're going to a smaller, maybe a one-day local Comic Con, or
just a solo book event.
Yes, or you're doing a signing here at Katie's.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, thanks to Katie's for letting us borrow the space. I love you. Maybe bring them all, because people then, it's less about sci-fi nerds and more about I'm a local author. People just want to know what you write at that point, because they're here because you're a local author, not because they love sci-fi. So it's knowing your market as well, and of course sometimes you just have to try it. So I've been doing these events for 3 years, and I've been keeping really good year-over-year data. So now I can look back and be like, okay, I always do great at this event, or I did all right at this event. I'll go, but I know I need to keep my expenses down. Keep my overhead. I don't need to bring a helper, stuff like that. Or I'll be like, you know what? No, this is 2 years. I don't really sell that many books. People only wanted romance or whatever it was. It was all horror writers or something where there's no market overlap. And I'm like, well, maybe next time I won't do that event. It's just not for me.
Yeah. I think events are getting better at that now, too, of like, this is a horror event. This is a fantasy event. Like, being a little bit more obvious with, like, what you can bring if you have multiple genres and stuff like that.
Right.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, so that gets down to the end. Like, what you kind of answered it, but what do you have planned next? Are you thinking of doing anything outside of this universe?
Yes. So I don't know that anything's going to happen until I finish the series because it's just taken over my life. But I am really, really, really hoping that I will be done with the series by the end of 2026.
Okay.
I'm really hoping book 12 will come out by the end of next year. I do have some tentative spin-off series planned, including a standalone sci-fi romance. But we'll just see if there's interest for them when I get there. But I do have some other projects in development. Specifically, I would really like to do a no spice romantasy.
Huh. Okay.
I want to have, so my goal is to have all the fun and none of the sin, which is probably not how I should market it, but it'll have all of the tropes, enemies to lovers. It can be steamy. Like, I'm all for a good steamy kiss, a little bit of pining, let's go. But it's all going to be closed door, and any sexual content is between married couples.
Yeah.
So my goal is to show that you can have all this fun, grumpy sunshine, whatever you want. Like, we're going to have a blast, cursed objects, all, all that stuff. And none of the spicy business.
Yeah.
So we'll see. Everybody I've talked to really loves the premise. Obviously, romantasy is very popular right now, and there's lots of people who would love to read more of it because they want the romance and the fantasy without the spice. So I think it could do really well. And that one's going to be more allegorical and less in your face.
Okay.
Hello, Jesus. So I'm hoping it would also let me break into some other spaces that right now don't really fit. Because there's some events I go to that are more adult geared, not like adult, X-rated, but like it's all grown-ups going, and they mostly want the romantasy or the heavier sci-fi and stuff like that, and this is a little bit too young.
Yes.
So I think it would let me get into some more spaces. It would let me get into some fantasy spaces like Ren fairs and stuff like that. So that's definitely in development. I just don't know that I'm gonna be able to really work on it until I'm done with book 12.
Yeah, you have to finish. You have to finish what got you started.
Yes, it is in development. I do have a title. I've got characters working. I'm working on outlines, stuff like that. So it is coming. There's a verse, I believe there's one in Job, and I believe in the Psalms, where God says, I've put a bound on the waters of the ocean so it does not run over. And obviously it's poetic, and of course it's true. We're not drowning. But I have taken that and now made that literal. And so my female main character, I say sirens, with the power of their voice, they are the ones that keep the ocean in bounds. And without them passing down that power to their daughters, the earth would flood. And so she's the last one, and of course she gets her power from, I'm going to call him the voice, or the voice of many waters. Obviously it's an allegorical Aslan type thing. So I'm taking that and I'm expanding it. I'm using some of the like Jewish lore about how they've associated sea with darkness and chaos and evil. And so my demons are all going to be water creatures and stuff like that. And
like Leviathans and whatnot.
Yes, and mix in like the Norse theology about like those water horses, like they show very briefly in Frozen 2. Mix in some of this Norse,
some Kelpies.
Viking. Yes, exactly. Okay. Mix in that kind of thing, and just make it into my own fantasy world. So.
That's interesting. We just got rid of, I picked up a book in a library sale. I think it was called Blue Sea or something like that, but it was based around mermaids. I'm like, I've never read, outside of Into the Drowning Deep, I've never read a mermaid book. So that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, so that'll be mermaids. It's kind of like Aquaman / Moana /
Atlantean Content Society.
Yes, exactly,
Okay, that's cool. Yeah, I just wanted to see what's coming up next. It was like, yeah, you've done so much good to just call it quits at that.
Yes.
Yeah, but yeah, this has been fun. I've loved picking your mind, and I know I should do more internet commenting stuff.
Like, comment, and subscribe.
Yeah, I do all that fun stuff. Both of these videos are gonna have her website and how you can get a hold of her stuff in there. You also have deals for like libraries. to give them books?
Yes. So if you are a librarian, a teacher, or like a youth pastor, and you've got like a church library or church youth group, nailed it. I do have all that information on my website. If you go into the drop down, it says for parents and teachers. I am willing to donate a series of paperbacks to any school or library. I love speaking to libraries or writing groups. So if there's anything I can do to help you and your young writers, just send me an email, and I would love to help.
All right. Yeah, that's another reason I wanted to do this, because we had talked about that at another book event here.
Yes.
And yeah, I have some connections, and just, yeah, that's what's great with starting with you, is because I can just pass this off to a lot of the Christian friends of mine that run Christian schools. My mom's a school teacher, Christian school teacher down in Georgia.
Oh, nice.
And actually my former youth pastor was the pastor of that church too. So like a lot of connections there.
Yep, so have them, I say, read the parent-teacher page on my website. It has everything about the series broken down, all the content. And if it sounds like a good fit for your class or your writers group, just send me an email and I would be happy to help out.
Mm-hmm. And you do writers workshops here at KD's,
yes,
right?
Yes, I do. Yes. Once a month we meet, we call them accountability meetings, and we sit and we focus on goal setting. Where are you at in your project? What's the next step for you? Do you have any questions about the process? And then we help you set a goal to be accomplished by the next meeting. We also, if you want to kind of just get your feet wet, we do also do write-ins, usually twice a month. We got one coming up, usually a Thursday and a Sunday. So I think the next one's going to be April 22nd. No, today's May. So April 22nd is the path. May 22nd, Thursday in the evening. Those are open to anybody, and they're just come and go as you please. So if you just kind of want to check us out, come and sit in the back room here and write with us for a little while, we'd love to have you.
All right, great. Yeah, that will not work for me because people are too distracting for me as an ADHD person. I have to be staring at a wall to do stuff. Anyways,
I spend more time during them shepherding other people to write, but that's why I'm here. So that's not for me. I have to write by myself, or else nothing's gonna happen. I understand.
So yeah,
so we'll see you at the accountability meetings.
Yeah, maybe, hopefully. But yeah, it's been great talking to Rachel here, and God loves you and wants to spend forever with you, and I want you to have a good life here on earth.